My mama buys $400 worth of clothes and go put down $1 a month. I still got stuff on layaway from 1973.
Yeah. I said faith will move mountains that I don't even know how the mountain's gonna be moved. My job is just to get to the mountain and then sit there. So, okay, God, I'm at the mountain. Did I get here early?
At 69, after more than 4 decades dominating comedy and Hollywood Sinbad, the legend of clean comedy, the man who could make an entire stage laugh just by walking out has finally returned. After the stroke that seemed to end his career forever, Sinbad reappeared unexpectedly with his familiar smile, his warm voice, and a treasure trove of behind-the-scenes stories he had never told before. Yes, you didn't mishear. A man known for his kindness and for avoiding drama, Sinbad actually has a personal list of the people who annoyed him the most, co-stars' colleagues' names that even for just a moment made him want to put down his props and walk straight off set. The thing is, he has never revealed that list publicly. Not on talk shows, not in interviews, not on stage, and absolutely not on social media. But if you pay close enough attention in the little stories he slips in casually, the throwaway lines backstage, the strange chuckles whenever someone's name comes up, you'll notice something unmistakable. Sinbad has had collaborations that drained him so much, he would never want to repeat them. Today, for the first time, we will piece together all those scattered anecdotes, gathering every small puzzle piece from interviews, industry rumors, and moments accidentally captured on camera, to shed light on the question fans have wondered about for years. Who exactly are the actors Sinbad secretly hated most in his career? And the 6 names on this list, surprising, bizarre, sometimes hilariously absurd, will show you why even a gentle soul like Sinbad once nearly lost his patience behind the camera. Ready? Let's begin with number 6. The person who made Sinbad freeze right inside the recording booth. Number 6. John Cleese and the comedic collision. Across more than 40 years of performing from Las Vegas stages to HBO specials, from over 20 films and sitcoms, to a reputation built on clean, sincere, non-vulgar, non-mean comedy, Sinbad has always been the warm, easygoing figure who made everyone around him feel at ease. To the public, it seemed almost impossible that Sinbad could truly dislike anyone, or at least that no one was toxic enough to get under his skin. That was until people heard him tell a strange story on a podcast, a dubbing session he once did with John Cleese, the Monty Python legend, which made Sinbad freeze for 7 full seconds, a moment he remembers vividly to this day. And the strangest part was Cleese's one line in that recording booth, the line that made everyone hold their breath, and quietly earned him a permanent spot on Sinbad's private list of never-again collaborators. It sounds like scripted Hollywood drama, but it actually happened. And to understand why, we have to rewind to 2013, when Sinbad, then 57, had just gotten back on his feet after major financial troubles, still cheerful as ever, and had been invited to voice a character in Disney's animated film Planes. In the same project, John Cleese, 74, at the time a legend of British comedy, the sharp mind behind satirical wit, a man who helped create Monty Python's Flying Circus, rated 8.8 to 10 on IMDb, was also brought in to voice another character. One was America's king of clean comedy. One was Britain's king of dark, biting humor. A meeting that sounded promising quickly turned into one of the most suffocating experiences of Sinbad's career. From the very first moment he stepped into the booth, Sinbad felt something was off. A small studio, white lights, a hanging microphone, a few technical assistants behind thick glass. Cleese entered, nearly 1.96 meters tall, lean with that familiar sharp gaze, a figure any comedian would respect. Sinbad, 193 meters, broad-shouldered, smiling warmly, raised a hand. "Glad to work with you, man." Cleese responded with a slight nod, no smile. Not hostility, just British. At first, everything went smoothly until the director asked them to try a more interactive section. Sinbad, by instinct, improvised a few lines to make the emotions flow more naturally. He'd done that for 30 years. His HBO special Sinbad Afros and Bell-Bottoms, 1993, was nearly 60% improvised and still earned massive ratings. But improv was exactly what Cleese, a man known for strict adherence to scripts, who famously wrote over 400 pages for Monty Python and the Holy Grail, could not stand. Cleese suddenly stopped, mid-line, turned to the director and said clearly, loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Are we doing the script, or are we doing his version of it?" The room went dead silent. No machine noise, no paper rustling. Just Sinbad standing there pausing, his smile freezing. He later said he had never felt a recording booth get that cold. And that moment lasted exactly 7 seconds. He counted because he had no idea what else to do. But that wasn't the only shock. Later, when Sinbad tried to lighten the mood with a harmless, friendly quip, Cleese delivered a thinner and deeper slice. "Oh, you Americans think everything is funny." A sentence that sounds like a casual remark, but to anyone attuned to comedic subtext, it was a cultural jab. Cleese embodied dark, surgical, cynical British humor. Sinbad embodied the America-friendly, light universal comedy that anyone could watch, anyone could laugh at. Two comedic worlds as opposite as the Arctic and the equator. And unfortunately, that day, they collided right in the middle of a Disney studio. From that moment on, the session became an exercise in coexisting without blending. Sinbad tried to maintain his usual cheerfulness, while Cleese upheld his rigid, almost chilly style. The director had to constantly mediate to keep the room's temperature balanced. One studio assistant later recalled how Cleese's voice, when he corrected a tone or emphasized a syllable, sounded like he was slicing the air. At the end of the session, Sinbad sat quietly for a long time. No words. Everyone understood he was processing the experience, not because he felt insulted, but because he was stunned. In 40 years of performing, he had met every kind of personality imaginable. But no one had ever made him feel like he'd just run headfirst into a mountain made of sound. The next day, the schedule changed. The two men no longer recorded at the same time. No one explained why, but everyone understood. Interestingly, no scandal erupted. No tabloids accused Cleese of offending anyone. There was no argument, no explosive drama. But afterward, when Sinbad was once asked which people he was the least compatible with, he told this story as a memory more memorable than it needed to be. And then he delivered a line that was pure Sinbad. Gentle, soft, but honest John's funny. But he's a different kind of funny. The kind I don't want to be stuck in a small room with again. No resentment, no insults, just incompatibility. A kind of incompatibility strong enough for Sinbad Hollywood's kindest comedian to place John Cleese at number 6 on his list of experiences he'd rather avoid next time. A 7-second silent collision that has echoed for more than 10 years. 5. Val Kilmer and the Film Project. That collapsed in 5 weeks. If Sinbad had to pick one person who reminded him of a storm, you never want to stand under it, would be Val Kilmer, Hollywood's most handsome star of the 1990s idol of millions. After Top Gun 1986, the man who transformed into Jim Morrison in The Doors, 1991, Doc Holliday in Tombstone 1993, and later became the third Batman in film history with Batman Forever, 1995. A towering talent, a blazing star, and also one of the most notoriously difficult actors to work with as documented by multiple directors. In 1996, Val Kilmer, then 37, was at the height of his fame. And that fame came with a dark side. Joel Schumacher, director of Batman Forever, bluntly told the press Val Kilmer is childish and impossible. Meanwhile, the crew of The Island of Dr. Moreau, 1996, described him in 3 words: unpleasant, unpredictable, unstable. And it was precisely during this difficult period that Sinbad, with a temperament completely opposite to Val's, was invited to work with him on a mid-budget action comedy film called Hostile Rescue. A project that no longer exists today because it was canceled just 5 weeks into production. And according to several crew members, Val Kilmer's behavior was one of the reasons everything collapsed. At the time, Sinbad was 40 and enjoying a streak of success. Houseguest 1995, $26 million First Kid 1996, $26.5 million HBO stand-up specials with high ratings. He was known for clean, friendly, conflict-free comedy. Val Kilmer was known for conflict with everyone. During their first table read, the atmosphere was already off. Sinbad entered with his usual smile, shook hands with everyone, bringing his signature positive energy to the team. Val Kilmer arrived last, wearing dark sunglasses indoors, not looking at anyone, not greeting anyone. Unsurprising, since co-star Michael Biehn once said, Val always acted like he was the only real actor in the room. 15 minutes into the reading, Sinbad, out of habit, improvised a small joke to lighten the mood. It was a skill that defined his career and had electrified audiences in his HBO special Afros and Bell-Bottoms 1993, which was more than 50% improv. But Val Kilmer did not like improv. He stopped, placed the script on the table, looked at Sinbad through his sunglasses, as if he were examining a strange creature, and asked, "Is this funny to you?" The room stopped breathing. Sinbad paused for 3 seconds, then forced a smile. I'm just warming up the scene," Val replied, cold as steel don't. And that was only the warm-up. On the second day of filming, the crew shot a small scene, Sinbad and Val tied to a post preparing to escape. Simple enough, but the ropes, props, and lighting required them to stand extremely close for about 20 minutes. Sinbad, being his cheerful self, started telling stories about his years serving in the U.S. Air Force from 1979 to 1981. But when he reached his third sentence, Val Kilmer, without turning, without looking, said quietly, "Can you not talk?" The air in that moment thickened like concrete. Some crew members later said they heard Sinbad's spirit crack a little. The next scene was even worse. During a sequence running away from a fake explosion, Sinbad entered the frame early by half a second. A tiny mistake easily fixed with another take. But Val Kilmer immediately threw his helmet to the ground and shouted, "If he can't hit a mark, why is he here?" The director halted filming for 10 minutes. Sinbad sat down completely silent. It was then that many crew members finally understood why Schumacher once called Val unmanageable, and why the island of Dr. Moreau had to replace 3 assistant directors in just 2 weeks. By week 3, the production quietly began separating their schedules to avoid having the 2 actors on set together unless absolutely necessary. Scenes featuring both of them were reduced to the bare minimum almost unheard of in a buddy action film. By week 5, Hostile Rescue abruptly shut down. Official reason: financial issues. But according to 2 lighting technicians who spoke to an internal publication in 1997, the truth was simpler. The tension was killing the film. Sinbad has never mentioned Val Kilmer by name when talking about difficult people, but he often describes the type with one line: "Some people are brilliant, but they're a hurricane." As for Val Kilmer, after 2015, he battled throat cancer, losing almost his entire voice. Life softened him. In his memoir, I'm Your Huckleberry 2020, he admitted, "I was difficult. I was young. I was stupid." But even as time passes for Sinbad, who is still recovering day by day from his 2020 stroke, that memory remains vivid, a collapsed project, a star too talented to dislike, but too difficult to endure. And that is why Val Kilmer lands at number 5 on the list of 6 people Sinbad quietly hopes never to work with again. 4. Martin Lawrence, the man. Sinbad, both respected and resented. If there was ever someone who could make Sinbad's expression change within minutes, it was Martin Lawrence, the rising young force of 1990s comedy. A man who entered the scene with such explosive energy that even veteran headliners felt a chill of caution. The funny thing is, they never clashed because of a specific scandal, but because of something much stronger, a quiet rivalry within black comedy culture, where every ego carries a hidden blade behind a smile. In the 1980s, Sinbad had all but dominated American stages. From Star Search to a series of HBO specials, he became an icon of clean, intelligent, human-centered humor. But one day, amid hundreds of newcomers trying to break through a name, appeared Martin Lawrence, younger, riskier, bolder, and most importantly, unafraid of offending anyone. The first time Sinbad saw Martin on stage, he instantly recognized something that many comedians rarely say aloud. "This kid could replace me if I'm not careful." Not because of skill or experience. Things Martin still lacked, but because of attitude. Martin didn't perform comedy to entertain. He performed like he wanted to blow up the stage, capture the full attention of a new generation, and become the next symbol of black comedy. You could see that ambition in the way he stepped into the spotlight. When Def Comedy Jam launched in 1992, Martin was chosen as the main host. Within a few episodes, the American press began calling him the new pioneer. That didn't make Sinbad happy. Not because he was jealous Sinbad had been at the top for over a decade, but because the comparisons between them became unavoidable. Every article mentioning Martin used Sinbad as the benchmark. And no seasoned artist enjoys being measured against someone younger with fewer years on stage. Things grew more tense when Martin fully embraced a style opposite to Sinbad's raunchier, harsher, more provocative, no topic off limits. Sinbad represented a generation of family-friendly comedy. Martin represented a new one. Fiery, chaotic, unapologetic. Whenever they happened to appear at the same major comedy festival, the audience always buzzed about who would burn the stage harder. That annoyed Sinbad more than any direct insult. There is a backstage story still retold by veteran comedians today in 1994 at a major gala in Los Angeles. Martin dropped a series of jokes on stage clearly aimed at Sinbad, the kind of sly digs about comedians who had become too safe and unwilling to do anything new. The room erupted in laughter. Martin basked in it, while Sinbad sat still with eyes cold as ice. When his turn came, Sinbad didn't say much. He simply delivered one line that froze the entire room. There are people who make the audience laugh, and people who just make them scream. A light hit, but a deep one. And Martin knew he'd been warned. From that moment, they were never truly close. Each pursued his own path, but every magazine at the time noted the silent rivalry between them. When Martin exploded with his sitcom, Martin becoming one of the highest-rated black sitcoms of the 1990s, the distance only widened. Some articles even called Martin the natural successor to Sinbad. For a comedian who had spent a lifetime building his identity, those words were sugar-coated blades. Martin didn't care much for Sinbad either. In one interview, he hinted that certain older comedians had boxed themselves into a too clean image to the point that they can't even say anything real anymore. Everyone knew who he meant, though he never said the name. Martin Lawrence never hid his belief that Sinbad's style was outdated. Then came Martin's mid-90s downward spiral, the 1996 incident, where he ran into the street with a gun, the 1999 heat stroke, that left him in a coma. Sinbad didn't comment, didn't comfort, didn't mock. He simply stayed silent. But many insiders said Sinbad kept his distance because he didn't want to be pulled into the chaos. A subtle yet clear message: even if he didn't openly dislike Martin, he didn't want to step into his volatile world. People often ask why two major stars of black comedy went 3 decades without a single collaboration, no film, no show, not even a commercial. The answer was never about scandal. It was about personality. Between them existed a uniquely Hollywood kind of fracture. Not enough animosity to start a war, but not enough warmth to stand side by side. A 20-year polite avoidance built entirely on opposing styles and competing ambitions. Today, as Sinbad recovers from his 2020 stroke and Martin continues riding the success of Bad Boys, both men have matured. But looking back at the comedy scene of the 1990s, it's clear to everyone that Martin Lawrence was one of the people Sinbad liked the least, not out of personal hatred, but because Martin represented Sinbad's greatest fear, a new generation rising to claim the crown he had worn for too long. The 3. Bill Cosby. The name that made Sinbad keep his distance. Among all the people Sinbad liked the least, no name carries more weight than Bill Cosby. Not only because Cosby was once an unquestioned legend of American television, the man nicknamed America's Dad throughout the 1980s, but because the relationship between him and Sinbad was filled with tension, misunderstandings, and a growing distance shaped by historical turning points. Sinbad entered the business at the very moment Cosby was dominating America, with The Cosby Show the #1 sitcom in the country, from 1985 to 1992. For any black performer at the time, Cosby was an immovable mountain. Yet few people know that Sinbad and Cosby actually started fairly close. Cosby took notice of Sinbad and invited him onto a different world, the spin-off of The Cosby Show. That opportunity propelled Sinbad's career upward, and it was also where the first cracks appeared. Cosby was the type of man who demanded absolute control. He walked into the writer's room like a general, with full authority projecting a my way or disappear approach. Raised in a culture of discipline, Sinbad understood it. But as an artist who loved improvisation, rule-breaking, and letting stories flow with emotion, he began to feel creatively suffocated. Editors from the show recalled that Sinbad often tried to add improvised lines, change the rhythm of dialogue, or steer scenes toward a more streetwise tone, things Cosby despised. Cosby wanted clean, family-friendly comedy with no sensitive edges, no deep racial commentary, and none of the loudness of stand-up clubs. Between them, an unspoken opposition began to form. Sinbad wanted black culture portrayed more authentically, while Cosby wanted it cleaned up, polished, and elevated into an idealized version. As The Cosby Show soared to cultural dominance, Cosby nearly became a moral standard setter for the entire black entertainment community. But Sinbad didn't believe in that mold. He once said, "I'm not trying to be anyone's moral example. I just tell real stories." Though he never named Cosby, everyone knew who he meant. Tension grew as Cosby repeatedly interfered in a different world, from scripts to casting. In several episodes, Sinbad appeared and Cosby ordered significant changes. Once Cosby even requested that Sinbad's screen time be reduced because it didn't match the tone. This left Sinbad feeling restricted. He didn't hate Cosby, but he clearly disliked being controlled by someone who believed he was always right. Then the world shifted. By the late 1990s, as Cosby's career slowed, old rumors, accusations, and long-buried files began resurfacing. Hollywood shook. Stories once frozen under ice cracked open like explosions. Newspapers from the Washington Post to the New York Times questioned the two sides of Bill Cosby. When Cosby was convicted in 2018, America divided. And Sinbad. He remained silent, but it was a heavy silence. Within the black acting community, people often said Sinbad had kept his distance from Cosby long before the scandals. Not because of them, but because he saw something else. He and Cosby were walking two divergent paths that would never align. Cosby represented discipline, patriarchy, and absolute control. Sinbad represented warmth, improvisation, and artistic freedom. One demanded everything conform to a standard he created. The other believed comedy should reflect real people. Their opposing natures made long-term collaboration impossible. There were even rumors that Cosby resented Sinbad for becoming one of the most beloved guest stars on A Different World. No one ever confirmed it, but in an industry where ego towers above everything, it was entirely plausible. Eventually, the two men simply drifted apart. No drama, no shouting, just walking in different directions with no intersection left. When Cosby fell into legal turmoil, many artists publicly condemned him, while others defended him. Sinbad did neither. He said nothing, no support, no attack, no judgment. That silence was in fact the loudest message. The distance between them had existed long before, and no scandal could bridge it. Today, if you ask Sinbad whether he hates Bill Cosby, he would almost certainly dodge the question. But if you ask whether Cosby ever made him uncomfortable, hard to work with, or incompatible with his creative spirit, the answer would be yes. Cosby is a chapter in Sinbad's life that is both brilliant and heavy. The man who gave him a career opportunity, but also the man he never wanted to stand beside for too long. A complex relationship, grateful yet distant, respectful yet cold, the kind of emotional contradiction only Hollywood can create. Number 2. Kevin Hart, when two comedy generations collide. If there is any relationship on this list that surprises fans the most, it is Kevin Hart. A clean comedy icon of the previous generation and the global superstar of modern stand-up, they seem like the perfect allies. But in reality, the distance between Sinbad and Kevin Hart is difficult to define. Not hatred, not scandal, but a deep difference in comedic philosophy and in the place each man occupies within the industry. Sinbad dominated American stages in the 1990s, with observational comedy, everyday stories told with wit, warmth, and charm, without profanity or shock tactics. He delivered hit specials like Sinbad Afros and Bell Bottoms 1993, and Son of a Preacher Man 1996, and was named one of Variety's top 10 comedians to watch. In Sinbad's era, American comedy relied on storytelling, personality, and genuine warmth while still retaining sharpness. Then Kevin Hart arrived. Hart exploded in the early 2010s with specials like Seriously Funny and Laugh at My Pain, the latter grossing over $15 million and becoming one of the highest-earning comedy specials of all time. Hart became a global brand. Blockbuster films, sold-out arena tours, multi-million-dollar endorsement deals, and a social media empire with hundreds of millions of followers. A new generation crowned Kevin Hart the new king of comedy, and many established names of the earlier era faded into the background. Among those overshadowed, at least in public perception, Sinbad stands out, not because he was jealous, but because audiences began comparing the two in ways that lacked nuance. For years, social media circulated memes like Kevin Hart is Sinbad at 2x speed. Sinbad is the analog version of Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart runs fast, Sinbad runs smooth. At first, Sinbad laughed them off, but when the press repeatedly framed Hart as the heir to Sinbad's legacy, he began to feel misunderstood. Sinbad didn't want to be seen as the outdated version, or the old generation being replaced. And Hart. He simply never responded, even when Sinbad appeared on talk shows and was directly asked about Kevin Hart. That silence made fans feel as though Hart didn't regard Sinbad as an important figure in the history of black comedy, even though Sinbad had helped pave the way for many artists who came after him. It created a subtle coldness between the two generations. Tension grew between 2013 and 2015, when Hart hit the peak of his career and became the highest-earning comedian in the world. Forbes reported Hart made $87.5 million in 2016, surpassing Jerry Seinfeld. Some producers even encouraged Sinbad to catch the trend and perform more. Like Hart, faster, louder, more personal. Something Sinbad deeply disliked. For him, comedy was storytelling, not shouting into a microphone or sprinting across the stage. During one radio interview, Sinbad made a comment that set fans ablaze. "Kevin Hart is great, but I don't do comedy the way he does, and I don't need to." A gentle statement, but the media twisted it into a headline implying Sinbad was throwing shade. Though he never insulted Hart, constant cross-generation comparisons only widened the gap. Another factor deepened that divided the way Hart acknowledged older comedians. On several talk shows, Hart often praised the mentors he admired, Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, but rarely mentioned Sinbad, even though Sinbad was one of the pioneers who brought black comedy into the mainstream in the mid-1980s. Then came Sinbad's stroke in 2020. Kevin Hart said nothing. No tweet, no post, no public message. While that wasn't wrong on a personal level for Sinbad's longtime fans who had grown up with him across generations, the silence felt like confirmation that there was never any real connection between them. They have encountered each other many times backstage at award shows and BET events, but always remained polite and distant. Not friends, not collaborators, no intention of ever working together. To the outside world, they represent two styles of comedy from two different eras. To insiders, they are the perfect example of Hollywood's soft conflicts. No scandal, no explosion, but a divide wide enough to keep two artists apart even though they should have been natural allies. Today, Sinbad still respects Kevin Hart as a global star. Kevin Hart, meanwhile, rarely talks about the earlier generation except for a few monumental names. They coexist like two parallel lines occasionally crossing at award shows' red carpets or televised events, but never merging. If calling this hate feels too harsh, then calling Kevin Hart the person Sinbad is least compatible with is far more accurate and puts Hart near the top of that list. But 1. Wesley Snipes. When two giant egos meet, Sinbad and Wesley Snipes never acted in a film together, yet their story has been repeated in Hollywood's backstage whispers for almost 30 years, becoming a hallway legend known to every black actor in the industry. And it all began when Passenger 57, 1992, turned Wesley Snipes into an action superstar, setting the stage for Blade 1998 to crown him the first major black icon in the superhero genre. At that time, Snipes was regarded as the king of black action films, a title that earned respect from many, but made just as many people wary. At industry events, Snipes often appeared like a warrior, walking straight out of his own movies, cold, quiet, sharp, and unafraid to show displeasure if someone crossed his boundaries. Sinbad once said on a talk show that he met Wesley Snipes backstage at an award ceremony in the early 90s. When Sinbad jokingly said he wanted to play a villain in one of Snipes' movies, Wesley simply looked at him and replied, "When I need you, I'll call." Those words froze the entire room for a few seconds. It wasn't an invitation. It was a polite way of saying, "I don't need you at all." From that moment, Sinbad understood that Snipes was not the type to see colleagues as friends. He saw everyone as competition. Tension grew as Snipes became embroiled in numerous behind-the-scenes rumors. The peak was the infamous Blade Trinity 2004 situation, where production documents, actor testimonies, and internal correspondence all confirmed that Snipes had walked off set, communicated only through sticky notes, argued with the director, snapped at colleagues, and even demanded everyone address him as Blade. Several actors later revealed the atmosphere on set was so heavy, you could feel trouble coming just by taking a breath. Sinbad, deeply connected to the black acting community, also heard these stories, and this was when his perspective collided directly with Wesley Snipes's. Sinbad believed that for black actors to advance in Hollywood, they had to stay united, support one another, and project a positive image so the next generation could have more opportunities. But Snipes behaved in ways that made the entire community uncomfortable. At a private event for black entertainers in late 2004, when someone mentioned Snipes and the set scandal, Sinbad said a line that was picked up by the media. "We're trying to open doors for a whole generation, and someone out there is breaking them." He didn't name anyone, but everyone knew who he meant. From there, the distance between Sinbad and Snipes deepened. Snipes' fans were unhappy. Sinbad's supporters stood firmly by him. Hollywood, always hungry for internal drama, used their story as the perfect example of the conflict between community spirit and individual ego. Then in 2006, Snipes was indicted for tax evasion, leading to a federal prison sentence from 2010 to 2013. The media called it the fall of the first black action superstar. This was also when Sinbad chose silence, no mocking, no satisfaction, but also no defense. Those close to him said Sinbad saw Snipes' story as a personal tragedy, but he clearly had no intention of erasing the long-standing distance between them. The two saw each other again once in 2018 at a reunion event for black artists in Los Angeles. Snipes arrived calmer, more subdued. Sinbad entered with his familiar smile. They shook hands, polite, formal, and that was it. No hug, no small talk, no reconciliation. A cold but necessary moment. Those present said, it wasn't hatred. It was two men who understood they would never mesh. Today, as Sinbad battles illness and Wesley Snipes works to rebuild his career, after years of controversy, people still wonder whether they can ever fully resolve the past. The closest answer came from Sinbad in a 2021 interview. Not everyone needs to be your friend. Some people show up just to teach you a lesson. A light, gentle line, yet enough to close more than 3 decades of tension between two talented men. One who believed in community, one who believed in ego. Two paths that were never meant to run together. That is why Wesley Snipes stands at number 1. Not because he and Sinbad hated each other, but because they represent two worlds that no matter how hard you try, will never truly become one.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore. Stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.